Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I am doing my edit of my favorite makeup brushes. I have done an edit in the past on my blog and I stand by all of those recommendations, but I do have quite a few new brushes in rotation and I just wanted to show you my favorite brushes, how I use them, and I'm going to cut an application of me using hopefully all of the brushes. I think I have footage of everything. We'll see. Definitely most of them. I also may have to break this up into two parts because I have face brushes as well as eye brushes, and there are a lot of brushes. So today or at least for now, I'm gonna start with face brushes and we'll see where this goes. I do consider myself something of a brush snob, but actually there's a huge edit and range of affordable brushes to high-end brushes, as well as synthetic to natural bristle and a blend of both as well. So I wanna be considerate of all price points, all different preferences in terms of brushes, and I'll talk about each of those as we go. So why don't we start at the drugstore? I have two favorite brushes that I've mentioned before, and these are affordable favorites. So these are the Real Techniques 241, that's this big brush, and the 242. And you'll see that these are flat-ish brushes. They are cut at an extreme angle. You'll see the angle right here. And what that does is it allows you to work this almost like a paddle brush to paint on your makeup. But then because it gets a little bit more diffused and softer at the edge right here, you're able to blend it as well. This gives you a really even, smooth application across the skin. And I find that it makes really quick work of blending, especially the foundation brush. I mean, this is a pretty big brush, so you're able to work across large planes of the face. I also love the concealer brush. This is much smaller. It's definitely wispier as well. I think you can see here. This works beautifully to blend out concealer under the eyes. It almost lets you like paint it across the under eye and gives you a really smooth application again. So these two, they've pretty much gone viral on TikTok and Instagram. I just really can't say enough good things about them. I wish I actually had a couple more of each in my collection. A step up from that in price point, as well as performance and softness, is the BK Beauty 109 brush. So I think this is actually the travel version of this brush, which is their 101 brush, and this is their big angled foundation brush. BK Beauty brushes are incredibly soft, very velvety across the skin. They are all synthetic, but they feel very, very refined, very soft. I like this brush, but I actually like this one even more, and I think you'll see a theme across all of my brushes is that I generally do gravitate towards smaller brushes. I just like the control that they give you, and because of the size of this, it's cut at an angle, but it's still relatively small in terms of surface area. I'm able to use this for both foundation as well as concealer under the eyes. Honestly, I could do all of my makeup with this. I could do my cream blush, cream bronzer, cream contour, all of my face makeup I would do with this brush, and I would love to have a couple of more in my collection. Continuing with base application, I have two kind of similar brushes. So this you've heard me talk about before a ton. This is the Merit 01 brush. It's the only brush that they've released so far. It's soft, it's dense, it's also cut at an angle. I guess I like things cut at an angle. It just gives you a nice like ergonomic experience. And even though this is dense, it still has a decent amount of give to it. So when you're applying it, you can work the product onto your skin and it blends as it applies. It's actually perfect for their stick foundation, which you guys know I love, but it also works really beautifully with liquid foundations as well because it allows you to get that really nice glide across the skin. But the density is also perfect for working in kind of a stiffer formula like their stick foundation. You're able to either tap or buff it into the skin. I also like that because the handle is kind of chubby, it stands on your vanity. You can stand it up straight when you're not using it. It's just a minor thing, but I like that. Similar to this is the Fit Glow Beauty brush, and I actually really like all of their brushes. They have, I think it's called their Teddy brushes. This is very weighty. It's a lot weightier than this. This is a little bit, it's like hollow, and this is plastic. This is metal. and it's hollow too, but because it's metal, the weight just feels a little bit heftier. This is a little bit fluffier than the Merit Beauty brush. I think this is slightly denser, and it feels super smooth. It gives you just a really diffused, seamless blend across the skin. It's also not too big, so I do work this, or I do use this to work in concealer as well as foundation. I also find that this is actually cut on like a rounded angle, whereas this is cut at a flatter angle. So that rounded angle gives you a bit more of a light application, like a lighter application, because it's blending out the edges as it's applying. It's a minor thing, but it's something I do notice, especially with liquid foundations. So those are some of my updated foundation brush favorites. I do have a theme for concealer brushes. So I mentioned the Real Techniques 242, and I have 3 other brushes that are all similar, but they perform slightly differently, and they're at different price points. So the most similar to the Real Techniques brush, I would say, is this brush, and this is the BK Beauty Angie Hot and Flashy collab. This is their A506 brush, and I think they call this their kitten paw brush, if I'm not mistaken. This is definitely softer and a little bit denser than the Real Techniques brush. I'll show you them side by side. The Real Techniques is much flatter, and this has a little bit more body, and it does feel softer. I think I just mentioned this in favorites recently. I love this brush. I apply concealer with it. It's really nice for getting around the nose because it gives you that like pointed edge to get around smaller areas. This is also great because it does have a bit of density. When I'm applying something like the Merit Foundation Stick or the NARS concealer, the Soft Matte Potted Concealer, I can dip into the pot and then apply it to the skin. So it's great for stiffer formulas as well as liquid formulas because it has that little bit of extra density. And then I have a drugstore and a high-end version of essentially the same shape of brush. So the drugstore version is the Real Techniques medium shadow brush. So it's actually an eye brush. It's a paddle shape. It's also flat. You can see it's pinched there, and it just has like a curved edge. This is also fantastic for concealer, for blending around the nose. I essentially use it in the same way as I use this brush. The higher end version of this that I love, and this is a newer addition to my collection, is the Refer 33 brush. So you can see they're pretty much almost the same size. I think the Refer hairs might be a touch longer, and it's definitely softer. It is a Japanese-made fude brush. Fude is the Japanese tradition of making brushes. And so you can see it has a pinched ferrule, it has that paddle shape, but this gives me a much more elegant blend. The hairs themselves are finer than the synthetic bristles, so that means you get less streakiness and just a smoother blend overall. Then we are getting into smaller face brushes that are sort of multi-purpose for me. Let's talk about this one. This is the Smith 103 brush. It's beautiful. It's a synthetic and natural bristle blend. I don't know exactly what kinds of fibers they use. It's all listed on their website. I actually do use this to blend out concealer. It's very thin. It's like wispy, so it gives you that diffused application. So I actually use this to whisk around the concealer if I want like a thin application. I've used it for liquid makeup, but it also works really beautifully to set the under eyes with powder. And in general, I do like setting the under eyes with a smaller brush just because it gives you more control in terms of where you place the powder, how much powder you place, and this shape is just perfect for that purpose. It's also great to blend out cream blushes, liquid highlighters. It's a cream and liquid sort of multitasker. I picked this brush up at the same time as the Smith brush. This is the Cosette S140. It's synthetic, it's more affordable. So this is a little bit denser, more densely packed. It has a similar shape, it's pinched, and it also comes, I mean, it's curved, but it's slightly more pointed around the edge. I love this for setting under eye powder as well. and it picks up powder really nicely. It applies it really nicely. I've used it for blush application, cream, and powder. I use this pretty much interchangeably with this. And the other small face brush that I love is Sonia G. And this is the mini cheek brush. It's got a similar story, pinched ferrule, little paddle. This one is very, very soft. It's not as densely packed. You can see it has a good amount of give. I like this for applying really light under eye powder. It's actually designed for blush application. It's the mini cheek brush. So it's actually really nice if you want to contour because it is pinched right there. So it can create, it can hug under your cheekbone really nicely. It applies blush really well because it is so soft. You can really work it into the skin, work the powder into the skin and create that buffed effect that makes powders look really skin-like the more you work them into the skin. And speaking of buffing powders into the face, into the skin, this is the Sonia G Smooth Buffer Brush. I think this was maybe my first Sonia G brush. It is a work of art. So this is smaller than her other buffer brushes. She has some bigger ones, but I kind of like that. So this is perfect for finishing powder. If you take something like the Armani Neo Nude powder or any of the Hourglass diffuse light powders, you can really blend and work them into the skin in a way that polishes the skin and blends any powders together. It creates a really cohesive look. You can also do this with setting powder, but this does work best with a finishing powder. It just creates the most refined, expensive look across the skin. It's kind of a specific makeup step. Obviously, you could use it for applying blush, applying bronzer, anything, but it's really the buffing motion that's going to give you that super smooth effect across the skin. So those are my favorite brushes for the base, for foundation, concealer, powder, and now we're gonna get into cheek brushes. One of my favorite brushes for cream blush is the Phytosurgence Sky Buff brush. So they have this smaller size and they have a bigger size that's called Sky Fluff. But I especially love the small size because I like small brushes. It actually fits perfectly into their potted blushes and it works well with all of my other cream blushes as well. So it's pinched slightly, but not too much. And it's also rounded. And this is an interesting brush because it actually has a bit of stiffness to it, which is what makes it good for cream blush because it's able to pick up cream products and lay it down and blend it out as well. So the edges, they get a little bit fluffier, but the core of the brush has enough density to blend out a cream product. And because it's slightly flat, like almost paddle shaped, it actually gives you a really smooth blend on the skin. And I usually use this in a patting motion to apply cream blush. I like this brush so much that I actually have a couple of them because I just like to have it around. Another cream blush favorite is actually a foundation brush, I think. This is the BK Beauty 106. It's perfect for foundation, but I find myself using it a lot for blush because of the shape. So it's rounded and it's also rounded this way. It has a really nice feel in the hand and it's very soft and it has a bit of fluff to it, but density as well. I love this for stamping on cream blush also because it is cut at a rounded edge. The edges blend out as you're stamping on. So it gives you density as well as blendability around the edges. And the last brush I love for cream blush is the Sonia G Mini Base. So this is actually a mini foundation brush technically. It is also round. The ferrule is round and it's cut at a rounded edge. It's so cute. It actually works really beautifully for base makeup, for concealer, but I love it for stamping on cream cheek products. I actually travel with it a lot because it's quite slim. And the pairing that I love this with the most is the Victoria Beckham Beauty Stick blushes, but I actually love this for any sort of cream blush application. Even though it's quite a small brush in terms of the surface area, it allows me that really controlled, targeted application. It also really works beautifully for applying like liquid illuminator, something like that, and it just gives you, again, the right amount of density and softness. One of the brushes I've had the longest in my collection is the Sephora Collection 56 brush. This was a limited edition, like holographic color that they came out with like 7 years ago or something, but they do make this in their permanent collection in their black, with their black handle. It's actually made for foundation, so it's great for that. It has both density and softness, but because it is slightly pinched, I actually find that it's really, really nice for cream contour or cream bronzer or cream blush. But if you do want to use it at an angle to get that kind of chiseled application right under the cheekbone, this is perfect for that. And I do use it with kind of all of my cream cheek products as well as liquid makeup. Sephora Collection brushes, by the way, are very good, especially their Pro line. This is the Pro Flawless Airbrush. Specifically for cream bronzer, cream contour, I love the Refer 04 brush. It's similar to this brush, but it's a little bit smaller. It's cut at an angle and it's also pinched. So you can see the line there, and then you can see that it's a little bit skinnier here and then wider. I've had mine for a few years now, so it's bloomed, which is normal for, especially with Japanese fude brushes, and it's gotten softer with time. So when I apply cream contour, I actually flip it over. So the dense side is against my ear and the fluffy side is pointing down, so that I'm getting the deepest application right here, and then the fluffy side is blending out the edges as it gets closer to the center of my face. It just tucks under my cheekbone really nicely. It also allows me really focused application of bronzer or contour along my hairline. Fits under the jawline really nicely. I have a few of these and I pretty much only reach for these with my cream contour generally. And then for powder blushes and bronzers, cheek products, I pretty much only use my Japanese fude brushes for powder application just because they are so soft. And there's really nothing comparable in terms of the blend, the diffused application, the elegance that a fude brush will give you. There certainly are synthetic brushes that give you a beautiful blend, but I also really am interested in the craftsmanship of Japanese fude brushes. They have a long-standing tradition of making beautiful handmade brushes, so I do gravitate towards them a lot. So one of my favorites is the Surratt cheek brush. This is one of the softest brushes I own. It feels like velvet on the cheeks. It's a smaller cheek brush, and you can see that it's a little bit longer in terms of the bristles. It has some flexibility to it. This applies powder highlighter like nothing else. I don't even apply powder highlighter very much these days, but if I do, I use this. I also love this for powder contour because it hugs under the cheekbone. I love it for powder blush. The only thing I don't use it for is powder bronzer, just because it's a little bit dense for that, but it just gives you the most beautiful, like, airbrushed application. For powder blushes, I have two sort of similar brushes actually. The first one is the Refer 05. This one is dense, but it has a lot of give to it, so you're able to whisk it across the cheek in a really nice way. It hugs across the apple of the cheek really nicely. You can see it is like cheek shaped in terms of like its roundness, and it gives you just a gorgeous blend. The other one is slightly smaller. This is a Hakuhodo brush. I can't remember what number it is because I've had it for a long time and the number has worn off, but I'll include it in the description box and link to everything below. This one is slightly smaller, but it has the same blendability, the same give across the cheek, and a similar like roundness in terms of its actual shape. And then the big kahuna is what I go for when I'm applying like a very generous but diffused application of powder bronzer. And this is the Refer 22 brush. I think this is their version of the old Tom Ford bronzer brush. I want to say that's what they designed this after. It's huge, so it's very wide in terms of like this way, and then it's pinched, but it's still very dense. It's so smooth and so soft. And when you really want to like work bronzer across the forehead, if you want to like buff it into the perimeters of your face, if you're looking for that really smooth but diffused application, not like a sculpted bronzer, but a really overall like summery bronzer look, this is the one. It's amazing, and it just blends out like nothing. It blends out so quickly because it's so big. So those are all of my favorite face brushes right now. Again, I do stand by all of my old favorites, and I will link that blog post below, but there are a lot of updated new favorites here and a lot of others that I use a lot, but these are the ones that I keep in rotation all the time and they stay on my vanity. So I do think I'm gonna do the eye brushes in part 2 because I know that's a lot of information. So stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.